All like coffee-eyed now.
And just give us speed, I'll do action, and then we'll just very casual, very just please tell me your full name and spell it as you'd like it to be listed.
Elizabeth Marie Perry. So ELIZABETH P as in Paul, ERRY. I always have to say the P as in Paul so it doesn't show up as Barry.
Yeah, exactly. And any title you'd like beneath your name, whether professional or personal? It's not necessary, but if there's something else.
I mean, I have like HR designations and stuff, but
Yeah.
no, nobody cares about that stuff.
So please tell me a little bit about your family history and what you discovered through your research.
So I'm a native Washingtonian, and I knew my family was from Washington. But one year when I was in college, and I came home and with a college friend, and her mother asked me, she said, "Where's your family from?" And I was like, "Oh, we're from DC." She said, "Well, hon, people aren't from DC. Like, you're from somewhere else." And I was like, "Well, I was born and raised in DC. My mom, her dad, his parents, their parents." I was like, "I'm at least fifth generation Washingtonian." I mean, and I didn't ever really thought about it until that moment when I was challenged. And I counted it back, and I was like, I'm really from DC. So, you know, I didn't know my dad. I knew my parents had been married, but it was just something that had been told to me. I never saw it. So I actually, this is pre 9/11 when you could do this, wrote off and actually got my parents' marriage certificate. And that started me writing off for other birth certificates, got my grandfather's, got his father's, because that's where I could get accurate dates, accurate names. And the last birth certificate I got didn't have a name on it. So they sent it to me. I knew who it was for, but that was the beginning of me from oral history knowing more than the records even showed. When Ancestry started, I could organize the notes and organize the stories I already knew. But I was amazed that I knew more, again, than the records would show. Through Ancestry, I would find the occasional picture. As Google and search engines have gotten better, as people are now starting to store more records, I'm finding more. But it's hit and miss. Records I could find 20 years ago online, I can't find now. So it's important for me to make sure I've saved them down, keep a copy. I've been able to find pictures, obituaries, articles in old African American papers, stories in books. I was able to find a couple of books with the history of Reverend Wiseman and his son are actually in there.
Please, tell me about who was Reverend Wiseman.
He was an immigrant, was born in St. Thomas, immigrated to Brooklyn, New York, and finished his primary school education there, and actually he was Lutheran when he immigrated, and then he actually was selected for a scholarship to attend Howard University. So he came down to Washington, went to school, got his undergraduate degree, and he started his own Lutheran church. Eventually he went back to Howard, got his PhD in theology, married a local woman. They had 7 children. I only knew about 4 before the headstone was found, and then found out they actually had 3 younger children, 2 that did not live to 5, and 1 that apparently died before he was 20. He was a giant in the community. If you do any research and look at old African American newspapers, you can find everything from the laying of the cornerstone of the church to events being held in his name. I even found an article that talked about his anniversary dinner to his wife. And what was odd about the article, they list they list attendees, including my grandfather's mother and who was going to be in the future my grandfather's father. So all that, he was very well known, very well covered, led his church until the 1940s, until he passed away.
Wow. And when this stone was found, tell me about that experience and just kind of what you thought about it, and really your experience of when you visited New Harmony and see there was no stone for the wise men.
Yep. So looking to improve my family history, archival work I'd been doing, I went out to New Harmony. I had found a record that talked about one of my ancestors being out there, and on a whim, went out to New Harmony just to see what markers there were, to see if I could get names, dates, more information to help build out my research. And I got out there and it was just open grass, open field, no cross, no marker, no name, no nothing. So when I was contacted by the project that there was a headstone recovered, I think I didn't even realize in my mind that headstones had even existed for them at any point. When the Wiseman headstone was recovered, it had 3 names I didn't even know about. I knew that my grandfather's mother had 2 brothers and a sister, so 4 children total. But for the 2 boys and a girl that were listed, didn't have any oral history about them, had not found any records when I had done my own research. But having those names from those headstones, I was able to find newspaper articles, obituaries. In talking to my family members, they started to connect some of the dots. Well, there was a name that was reused. Yep, all that lined up. And then even seeing one of the names on the headstone is a family name. My name, Elizabeth, is a big family name. So in one way, it was a surprise. It kind of breaks your heart to know that they'd spent the money, they had lost these children, they had memorialized them, and to know that all of that had been discarded. And at the same time, you connect back to, here's a name that made it all its way to me, from that generation to myself. So extremely powerful.
It'll be amazing to have something tangible, but certainly we know that there's up to over 30,000 stones that could be in that Potomac River. Are you hoping that we can also find the Reverend Wiseman's stone? And what would that mean? And are you just even curious what it looked like? Because this was such a big personality, we can only imagine.
His stone, I actually came across a couple of obituaries from him. One was from the actual Virgin Islands, and they talked about how proud they were of him, of his work. In my research, you could see him traveling back to the West Indies a lot, doing a lot of work back in his home country. So just from the obituaries, just from his legacy, that work that he did in the community, the work that he did with consumption. I had no idea that, consumption was a big public health issue in his time, and all the work he did there. I can't, from what I do know about him, I can't even imagine what that stone would look like. The size of the stone that they had for his children, I can't imagine what the stone would look like for him. His wife followed him in death within 10 years. I am sure her name would be with his. Yeah.
I hope it can, yeah. And there's been talks of doing further recovery efforts, so hopefully we'll come to that. And tell me, there's some amazing pictures of Reverend Wiseman. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the pictures you've seen?
So there, in my research, you come across newspaper articles. So there are some that are sketches, but I've also found a book on notable African Americans, and there's an article on him, and he's standing there in his full regalia with the robes, and when you see his picture, you get a sense of how large his personality must have been. When I read the articles about him, I don't even think I can really get my arms around how much of a public servant he was, how much he cared for his community, how much he cared for his family. He just seems like a larger than life figure that did a lot for the community. To have a church that I remember going to as a young child, so that was 50 years after he passed on. So to have that kind of legacy just in the community, to tie all that back to a stone, to have a place where we can honor him, remember him, and to just prove he was here is important. Right now, when you go out to Harmony, there's nothing. There's nothing. They know where he is. I can stand at his grave, but there's nothing else marking all of his wonderful achievements. And that's a travesty.
With that being said, what would you like to see come out of this project?
Selfishly, I would like to see as many stones as possible recovered. I would love to see, again, selfishly, me find more information about my family, see more stones, get more dates, have more names. But for the larger project, honestly, what I would love to have resonate in this area in particular is more people connecting to their history and recognizing the power and the history of our ancestors that came before us. Being a native Washingtonian, I'm not alone. And having more people being able to connect to that history, know the legacy of what their ancestors did, and being able to remember them, not in theory, but to see it. To know they were there, to see those names, to see those dates, to see the stones that they paid money, had people create, put that out there. And honestly, just connect them back to the actual graves would be amazing.
Fantastic. Anything else you'd like to say in conclusion, just about your family or really anything, any statements that you'd like to make?
I think the biggest thing for me for that project, again, personally, is I selfishly would like to see more of my family's stones come out, because it just brings them back to life for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.